Cheers, everyone. It's Sleepy Reader, aka Damien, and this is my comic book countdown, my comic book videos thoughts, where I will look at the books that I read this week from, let's see, it was the week of Wednesday, February 14th. I got 8 new comics, so I'm going to do a countdown of them from 8 to 1. Totally subjective based on my feelings as I read them. Um, so there might be comics that I liked better than another, even though I knew one was technically better than another. That sort of thing. Anything can trigger me. In fact, one thing that did affect my reading this week, because I am just getting back into new comics, is for 3 of them I managed to get a bunch of issues leading up. Like we're on issue 3 and I got 1 and 2 also. So I had a lot of extra reading to do. In fact, with one of them I read five issues in a row, and that may have totally affected the way I perceive those comics. But that's just the way it is. Then I rank them higher or lower because of that effect. Um, I am drinking the hippie caffeinated drink of the week. Um, it's a matcha mix that I mixed myself with honey and oat milk, so very hippie-ish, I guess. This podcast, meanwhile, the podcast probably not a very hippie cup podcast. It's kind of a general purpose podcast where a group of people get together every week and talk, but a lot of it's kind of nerdy comics, movies, nerdy kind of leaning into the nerdy stuff. Occasionally they even talk about sports, but not too often. So let's see. I had a pretty good week. I think I'm still basically sort of poking around at what new comics I can jump onto and whether I would like them or not, and whether to add them onto my pull list. So first, my number eight comic, and one that was sort of the most disappointing, I guess, or least exciting to me, unfortunately, was Creepshow, which is an adaptation of a Joe Hill story. Joe Hill, the horror author who sometimes writes for comics, like what's his famous Lock and Key is his creation. But this is an adaptation of something called Wolverton Station, so I'm putting it at number 8. Despite some good aspects to it, it just the overall feeling of it was kind of yuck and why like um so it has some pretty cool art by Michael Walsh, who I think does his own coloring too. He's most well known, I think, for that Silver Coin series of horror stories, in which he did all the art and it got a different writer every month. And and as you might expect, had some good issues and some bad issues, but I always enjoyed Michael Walsh's art. And the same is true here. And I really, on some of the pages, I really like his coloring choices, like that background there behind the windows. Um, and So it's kind of a werewolf story. There's a lot of intestines. It's kind of a joke, a jape, I guess. A joke on high-end collectors of pop culture ephemera, a joke on people who are fans of horror movies. I'm not sure what it's a joke on, but it felt like a joke. Um, as our character sort of traveled into a world of werewolves. Very British werewolves. So that sounds good as I talk about it. But in the end, I just sort of felt like, huh? Isn't there more to this story? So that was my number 8. Since Creepshow is this was a one shot, and Creepshow is an anthology magazine, I guess it doesn't prove to me that I shouldn't get Creepshow or not. I don't know. And I do have some other creep shows lying about that I can read. And then another number one, well, an actual number one that I got to jump onto is this oversized book um, from the Matt Kint line of comics. They're called Flux House. So anything that says Flux House is either by Matt Kint or approved of by Matt Kint for uh, for Dark Horse. So they have his own sort of sub label at Dark Horse. And I was excited to grab this. It is $8, so twice the cost of a regular comic. It's actually longer than a regular comic. I didn't count the pages, but I think about 30 pages, and then the pages are oversized. It's on this really nice paper. You can see the coloring. It looks really good on this paper, even though I actually texted Bill Crabtree, the colorist, and asked him if he knew what kind of paper this was going to be on in advance, and he said no. And that's one of his bugaboos as a colorist, that he never knows in advance what the color, what the paper will look like, or what kind of paper it will be, and what kind of effect it will have on the color. So maybe he would have adjusted this color more had he known the paper, but it still works really well. And I actually really loved the art on here. So I was really torn because I love the art, love the the total effect by the colorist and the line artist. The line artist is Dan McDade, and I don't recall that name before. Nice lettering by Jim Campbell also. So it's a really nice package, but it's kind of an odd story by Matt Kint. Um, it's got this awkward, in my mind, awkward transition from these. So Earth has discovered like a wormhole type thing, an anomaly that allows them to go directly to another planet, and so they're setting up a base. They have set up a base on the planet. Let's see, where was it described? I think that's the visual of the base, with a perimeter, that's safe. Um, Only it's not. So yeah, that was a spoiler. uh, but it's a spoiler for something that happens early in the book. And the transition from what I thought the story we were getting into to the story that we do get into, which is eventually this woman is alone on this alien planet. I don't know, it just didn't quite click with the setup of like a human military excursion into the planet. And and so maybe by issue 2 I will get over kind of that shock, but apparently the planet has this whole culture with a number of aliens already there. So what was the Earth humans thinking they were going to do by coming in and setting up a military base, just plopping it down on an unknown planet? Um, but and so some of the aliens look more alien than other. I don't know. I just got kind of thrown off, and I didn't get sucked in the way I hoped. So I don't know whether I'll pick up another copy of this $8 comic book that is beautiful, but not a satisfying read for me. So that was number 7. And I will at the end of the video show you guys some other things that I picked up recently, books and other comics and stuff. So in at number 6 would be The Displaced. This was a really interesting comic book, and good sort of basic storytelling art with nice color, effective colors. Um, the art and the colors are neither beautiful nor distracting or in any way. It was good. Um, and I do sometimes like this kind of basic kind of drawing. Uh, and it's a story of cities that disappear. Um, uh, it's set up in a way where there's all kinds of interesting characters, and we follow them. Feels almost like a Stephen King, the beginning of a Stephen King novel or something, or of a Twilight Zone-esque movie. And in that sense, it felt very familiar once I saw where the plot was going. Um, so I enjoyed it, but that sometimes familiarity breeds love, and sometimes familiarity breeds, sort of a slight disinterest. So I am again, it's what it's worth reading, but do I want to add it to my pull list or not? I'm not sure. Put it in at number 6. Really, the only book that based on the individual story, I would not add Creepshow to my pull list. The other ones are all good reads, and would be tempting to add to my pull list. I can't add everything. At least I don't think I can. So the next book was an interesting one at number 5 called The Infernals. And it had a lot of familiar horror story tropes, but with a new kind of angle. So it's about the Antichrist, the son of Satan, who has set up kind of an empire of evil. I heard someone else say in a review that they are working towards the Armageddon, or what do you call it when the in from the Book of Revelation, the end of the world that the Antichrist is supposed to bring about. But I don't know that they specifically mention that in here. But it's uh, and rather they talk about continuing his empire. But maybe it is to bring about the end of the world. That would make sense. Um, so, so the Antichrist is dying. He's got cancer. I guess he smoked too many cigarettes, and that was a mistake. He didn't get to fulfill his mission. So he has to choose one of his three children, and each one is an interesting kind of character. And he's, I think, by the end of the book, they set up some kind of contest they have to do between them. I should reread this one because now I can't remember what the contest was. But that's better. I don't have to spoil it for you. The art was really cool, kind of this painted art style by John J. Pearson with Lola Bonaro. The writers are Noah Gardner and Ryan Parrott. I feel like I've heard of Ryan Parrott before, but other than that, everyone in here is not known to me. So this is good. This is a good comic that feels like kind of a, you can almost imagine it a TV series about a satanic family. And maybe, is this, maybe the writers are TV writers. I wouldn't be surprised if that turned out to be the case. Anyway, I enjoyed it quite a bit. This is an image from a cool dream sequence. Um, so I think I will probably continue to get it. Uh, I'm thinking about it. It was cool. I think there were moments where I wasn't sure which character was which. That's a thing that seems to happen a lot in modern comics, but it's so easy to fix, and I don't understand sometimes why the editors don't catch it and say, okay, you should name this character in this panel so that going forward we understand which one of these two characters is the Antichrist's child or something like that. Okay, so and maybe that just, even though it had a little twist, it did again suffer a little bit from the sense of familiarity, but kind of positive and minus. Like that sense of horror movie familiarity was kind of fun too. Uh, this book, The Bloody Dozen, which I put in at number 4, uh, does not have that sense of familiarity. It is also kind of a horror book with a secret history conspiracy in the world. It's the second series from the Tales of the Shrouded College. And I think I'm going to put it on my pull list. And I think I'm probably just going to tell my comic shop to put any Shrouded College books on my pull list. The only downside of this for me, it was written by Charles Soule, and the art is by, well, on the cover says Albuquerque. I foolishly thought it was another Albuquerque. It's Alberto Jimenez Albuquerque. With coloring by Rachel Rosenberg. And the art at times I like, and at other times I really don't like. Let me show you. I really don't like his style. And, well, I'm not finding it. I just flipped through the whole comic, didn't find the parts that were really good examples of what I don't like. Funny. Well, anyway, just have to take it from me. And I think part of the problem, it's not a line art style that I'm ever going to love, but at times the colorist served it well, and at other times made it extra ugly. Um, and maybe her tastes in colors just don't match my tastes in colors. You know what? I read 3 issues of this, and I was looking for pages from an earlier issue. As a better example of what I didn't like about the art. Let's see. So yeah, I also, this cover is beautiful though. Number 1, Bloody Dozen. So the Shrouded College is some kind of uh, secret thing that's been around in the world for thousands of years, and they get different people to go on missions for them. I only read the first issue of the first Shrouded College. I randomly picked it up, and I need to go back and find those issues. It's really cool writing by Charles Soule. His art partners are a mixed bag for me. So yeah, there's kind of the example of the kind of art I'm just not too crazy about. Um, and I don't think the colorist style helps a lot. Although the colorist is working very hard. There's lots of bright colors and stuff. So anyway, I'm not doing a good job of describing the Shrouded College, and we don't know that much about them. But in this one, a group of people, all of whom were astronauts or wannabe astronauts, are sent on a mission to near Sun orbit where 9 superpowered vampires have been held in captivity for 100 years in a cross-shaped satellite. And that part is really cool. Where the story is going at this point, I'm not sure. They um, they have freed the vampires, and I think that's one thing that wasn't 100% clear to me. I think the Shrouded College has an opponent, some other group, the Architects or something, who uh, who captured the vampires, and for some reason the Shrouded College wants to free the vampires, even though the way we've been set up is these vampires were horrible and there would be no reason you would want to free them. So I assume that will be revealed. It also makes me feel like maybe I need to reread this and look a little closer at what Charles Soule is up to. So other than a few little glitches here and there, um, and not loving the artwork, but the artwork does tell the story. This is definitely going on my pull list, and like I said, it was at number 4. So the top 3 were all great, and as often happens, I was battling in my mind which to put. Well, actually, I knew right away who was number 1, and battling in my mind which to put at 2 and 3. So if I did this 10 minutes later, I might switch them again. But I'm putting Our Dust Bones in at number 3. It has amazing, amazing artwork by Ben Steinbeck. And I read 3 issues of this in a row. And it was one of those things where I said to myself, well, I'll read the first issue and then, tomorrow I'll read the second. But once I started reading, I couldn't stop. And I read all 3 in a row. And it's Ben Steinbeck does the writing and the art, and the coloring is by Dave Stewart. And there are some pages that were a little too dark, but overall the color was beautiful. The line art is incredible. And so this is one of those examples of someone where he's the artist and the writer, and it really makes everything click just right. The story is in a apocalyptic far future, where there's basically not much left, at least not in this part of the earth. So it's just humans eating each other, and as such, that is super super grim. Um, and so I think I couldn't. I think that's the reason I put it a little lower. Although I think it's a much better made comic than my number 2 comic, but I had a happier time with my number 2 comic. Um, so if you're up to a really grim world with really grim cannibalism, but beautifully drawn, uh, this is like a heavy metal story living up to its promise. Heavy metal stories always had cool art and kind of a cool concept, but didn't always go anywhere. This feels like it's living up to that kind of wild sci-fi promise, of those kinds of stories. So I'm super excited about Our Bones Dust. Oh, and I should mention that I'm sure I've heard about it from other people, but the person that I keep hearing about it from is Jared Osborne on his videos. So he put Our Bones Dust into my head, so I was looking for it at the store and hoping I could find all the issues. And luckily I did after going to 3 different comic book stores. That's a whole nother saga of trying to get new comics lately has not been so easy. Which does make you think like part of what's hurting the comic book industry is is the confusion and difficulty of buying comics, of buying new comics. Anyway, and for instance, some people might not realize that Beware Planet of the Apes is the one Marvel comic in their Planet of the Apes releases that is directly tied to the first set of Planet of the Apes movies, the Charlton Heston ones, as I think of them. And as I reviewed this last week. I reviewed the first issue last week. It was probably a few weeks old, and this week, happily, issue 2 came out. I don't love that cover. Um, I love I love the little bits of old artwork. This is Alfredo Alcala artwork that they have here. They have 2 pages of that, 3 pages of that, maybe more, before they dive into their story. Um, so that artwork to that is just not as exciting. But the artwork does the job. The color the color works better this time. I don't know if they changed the paper again or if the colorist, because it is the same colorist as on the first issue, saw the first issue in time to adjust these colors a little bit. They're not super exciting colors. Maybe if I downloaded the digital version, I'd see more of interest here, but it looks kind of plain vanilla, but plain vanilla with browns. Um, so anyway, I can see the art and the story is a lot of fun. What the writer Guggenheim is doing, it now appears, is adding in a whole story that happens to some of our main characters from the first Planet of the Apes movie, where they encounter other levels of the world of the mutant humans from beneath the Planet of the Apes. They encounter those beforehand. So I think something is going to erase all their memories. That's the only way I can see it. So it's a bit of a cheat in a way as a prequel, but on the other hand, it gives them a chance to do a fun story, at least a nice nugget for those of us who are obsessed with the original Planet of the Apes movies, um, and perhaps the original Planet of the Apes Marvel comics. So yeah, there's maybe 5 pages of the original in here. Um, and it's fun kind of adding on to the lore. At least I'm finding it fun the way they're adding on to the lore of the original Planet of the Apes. Sort of an extra layer of secret history. I really enjoyed that. But as I mentioned before, comparing Our Dust Bones to Planet of the Apes, Our Dust Bones could become, potentially a minor classic of comics, whereas Planet of the Apes, it's just a tie-in comic. But I just had a ball. I just enjoy reading it, so I put it at number 2. And then at number 1, which people who used to watch my comic book content were seeing Usagi Yojimbo coming in at number 1 a lot. And number 1 is Usagi Yojimbo. This is part 5 of his Ice and Snow storyline. Is issue number 247 of the entire series. But as many of you know, you can jump in on Usagi at the beginning of any storyline. It's not at all, you do not at all need to go back. I did not start at the beginning. I started a few years ago, when they started doing it in color. And Usagi in color to me is wonderful. I apologize to the people who love it in black and white, but I love it in color. Um, so I read 5 issues of Usagi in a row. I had read the first issue or 2 of this before, and then I reread it. And I also got suckered here. Let's see. So in my random, yeah, I didn't completely give up buying new comics at shops. I would randomly go into shops every month or two and pick up some things that looked interesting to me, of course, including Usagi. And I apparently bought 2 copies of issue 3 because they had different covers, and I, didn't recognize it. I love this variant cover. Actually, is a really beautiful painting. But yeah, I get also another side of how I think comics are hard for people to jump into because the variant covers are very confusing. Anyway, this Usagi storyline just builds beautifully. Would make a fantastic. You could lift this story into a Conan comic, and it would be an amazing Conan story. It would have a different kind of effect being in a different world and a different art style. But the basic plot that brings together the threads of two different evil, supernatural seeming creatures and a band of brigands and our two noble samurai hero, Usagi, and his cousin. I forget his cousin's name. But anyway, it all works wonderfully. I think when I read the first issue, I thought, oh, this is just going to be kind of, we joke that Usagi's either like an A plus or an A minus at the worst, the worst Usagi. So I thought, well, this might be a A minus Usagi when I read the first issue in the series, this mini series. But as it moved on, as all the pieces came together, it was just such a great read and such a great Usagi story. So Usagi Yojimbo at number one. That's already on my pull list. I just wrote down all Usagi. Get me all Usagi. Oh, no more of my hippie drink left. So let me just quickly show you a few things that I also have picked up. Um, Thanks to the amazing Gore Vidal, one of my favorite channels. He also is on BookTube at Libro Paradiso, and those videos may be even better than his comic book videos. Pains me to say, but anyway, thanks to him, I knew of the availability of this gallery-sized Daredevil Born Again by Miller and Mazzucchelli. And I wish more comics came out like this. I currently consider this the most ideal format for reprinting story arcs, classic story arcs. So I wish DC would do it too, and I wish Marvel would do more of them. But because it's not those super thick omnibuses, I love to collect those, but those are harder to read, and it's a little bigger than an omnibus. So, but it's not so big like these really giant ones that I also love to collect. But those ones I have to like lay out on the floor to read. So I think that this is really a perfect kind of format. Let's see, I do have an omnibus here, so we can, which gives away another one of my purchases. We can compare it to an omnibus size. So it's a bit bigger than an omnibus, but a lot less thick. This I think has about 8 or 9 issues in it, and then it has some quite a nice. Well, you can see all the black pages are the extras. A nice chunk of extras with a lot of David Mazzucchelli thumbnails or loose layout sketches, which even those aren't so loose. They're pretty good. Um, Covers. I think there's a script in here. Let's see. Yeah. So maybe you can read the script and see how David Mazzucchelli laid it out. Um, so very cool. And maybe that material has already been in some other collection of this series, but this just seems like a great way to own Born Again. And so I wonder if we can get, maybe they'd need 2 of these to capture Frank Miller's first run on Daredevil, because that's still my favorite, maybe because of nostalgia and the impact it had at the time. This was really great, and it was fantastic to see Miller back on Daredevil, but his first Daredevil run, where you could see him improving as a writer and an artist on every issue, that was really exciting. So yes, I got the Romnibus, the Romnibus, Volume One. I think there's either going to be 2 or 3. So this is all John Buscema. I mean, sorry, all Sal Buscema artwork. I don't know if I need the final Rom stuff with the sadly bad Steve Ditko artwork. I'm not sure. I'll probably give in and get all the volumes, even though I have almost all the issues. But a lot of Rom was published during an era where the printing looked kind of fuzzy and blurry at times. So it's worth it to me to have it on the slick paper. Um, Maybe it's the era where they were using plastic, what do you call them, plastic printing plates or something. Jared Osborne knows more about that than I do. So anyway, excited to get this, and I got that through In Stock Trades. I got a bunch of Tomorrow's magazines, the latest Jack Kirby collector with a beautiful sketch of of Darkseid. And what they do is they get these con sketches. Oh, maybe this one is not. Usually they get a con sketch and they Xerox it and they hire some modern artist to ink it. But this, yeah, it says GW. Maybe GW is the colorist. That's probably what it is. Yeah, the colorist is Glenn Whitmore. So this was a marker kind of drawing that Kirby must have done at a convention at some point in 1984. But it's so there is unfortunately no physical Jack Kirby museum. There's an Hergé museum, and there's some other museums devoted to comic book artists. But there's a virtual Jack Kirby museum. But still, Jack Kirby may be the only artist who has a long-running magazine devoted only to him. This is issue 89. 89 issues of a magazine that is only about Jack Kirby, which shows you the impact of that artist. And here's a issue of Comic Book Creator focused on Steve Gerber. It's going to have Mary Screens, Val Mayrick, Mike Diodato Jr. in it. I didn't know Mike Diodato Jr. worked with Steve Gerber, but maybe he did and I missed it. So looks like it's going to be quite cool. I have to find time to read all of these things. I got one more. Um, this is Alter Ego, which is the fanzine started by Roy Thomas back in the early 60s, I think, or maybe even the early 50s or late 50s, I'm not sure, which he then took up again after he kind of mostly retired from comics, and he puts out with Tomorrows. And it usually focuses on the Silver Age. Torres started out as an EC artist and became a mad artist, and also did all kinds of other cool stuff. So anyway, I'm looking forward to reading about this. I think I saw that cover and I had to get it. I couldn't even remember who Angelo Torres was at first. But then once I made the connection with Mad Magazine, it made sense to me. So cool, very cool. But there's more. When I went back and hung out at my comic book shop, my comic shop owner convinced me to buy the first volume of World Tree. He thought I would like it, and if I like it, then I can jump on with the series, the ongoing series on my pull list. He said that currently, kind of in New Comics, his best-selling author is that's weird. It doesn't have the James Tynion. His best-selling authors, his James Tynion comics are leading the pack in his sales, but sales are way down, and there's not much profit at all, according to him, in New Comic sales. And what's keeping his shop going at the moment is high-end comic sales, which is something he always has specialized. I always thought his prices were a little high, but I guess maybe at the high end, high condition comics, he knows what he's doing and has a following amongst the high end collectors. I also picked up Monica, which a lot of people said was the best comic of 2023. So I'm excited to read this, a little trepidatious with all those high compliments of, what if I don't like it? Or what if I don't get it right away and it's the best comic ever? I think it's interesting because I heard that it's very pulpy, plays with a lot of homages to pulp magazine or pulp comics. Uh, but the cover and the title, Monica, it just looks like some kind of autobiographical comic or some, regular mundane fiction kind of comic. Uh, they didn't. If they put that on the front cover, maybe people would get a different idea. um, I cynically thought this is a marketing thing that Fantagraphics wants to sell to that more sophisticated audience. And out of the library, I just because I was at the library picking something else up, and they had this volume of Creepy, volume 13. and it's just full of great art. I don't know if I probably won't have time before I have to return it to read these stories, but I've already had a good time looking through at the art, and I'll do some more of that. We've got Richard Corbin and Gonzalo Gonzalo Mayo. That's an artist you don't hear much about, but he had a really cool style, a Spanish artist. There's some more Richard Corbin. The Richard Corbin stuff for creepy seems uglier than like his heavy metal work or something. Not sure who that is, but anyway, uh, don't forget most libraries, at least in the U.S. now, have a lot of graphic literature. And then off of Instagram, I was following this artist. I couldn't even remember how I was following him. It must have been maybe because I was following Alex Zurit and some other more out there artists that I ended up following this artist named Skinner. And I got some t-shirts from him, which maybe you'll see in other videos. And he put out this magazine, 2 issues of this horror magazine called Skin Crawl. And he just goes by the name Skinner. Um, and I guess there's one of these issues also had a color edition, but that was sold out. Um, so I haven't read any of this. It looks like, super over the top horror, maybe in a EC Comics vein, crossed with Underground Comics, perhaps. Of course, a lot of Underground Comics came out of EC Comics. So these just seem like fun things to own. I think you have to follow him on Instagram and then go to his store if you want to. I don't know if these are for sale anywhere else. Skin Crawl was $10 an issue, I think. Oh, and they're signed, but who cares? Or I don't care. Oh, and there's a print. Looks like a demon squashing a wizard's head. Anyway, I think the big thing I like about Skinner is his ink work and his wild compositions. Um, a lot of it in color is, well, I wish I was wearing one of his t-shirts now, but is like crazy blacklight posters. The art in these comics is a little different than some of his other artwork. But anyway, another exciting thing. So that's my week in comics. And I hope you're all well and enjoying your comics, and I'll talk to you again soon.